All right, today I'm going to talk about why I moved to Vietnam, because I get this question all the time. It's probably the question I get asked the most. And some people say, why Vietnam? And some people say, why Vietnam? So I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to tell you how and why I moved here and give you guys some tips for any of you photographers out there that want to make a living working abroad like I did. So let's get into it and let's talk photography. So as always, guys, don't forget to check out my online store at justinmott.com, where I've got presets like this one that will not make you a better photographer, but they will add some pop to your images. I've also got a variety of one-on-one online learning packages for any of you that want to step up your photography and learn directly from me via Zoom. That's open to all levels and all genres of photography, and there's all sorts of different packages for all sorts of different budgets. I've got prints that make great gifts for the holidays. You can check that out as well. And lastly, there's only a few slots left for my Northern Vietnam workshop, so after this, if you're like, that guy's kind of cool, Vietnam seems kind of cool, maybe I'll come there. I've got 5 slots left. You can pay the deposit. The workshop is focused on travel photography and street photography. It's going to take place here in Hanoi and up in the northern mountains of Sapa. It's going to happen in March 2023. Again, check all that out at justinmott.com. So why Vietnam? That question I get asked all the time. Again, I get asked 2 ways. Why Vietnam? And then I get asked, why Vietnam? And the answer is, I don't know. I just sort of did the globe spin, put the finger on it. No. Well, it's a long story, and I won't tell you the really long story because I don't think anyone wants to hear me babble on for like an hour. I'll try to keep this short and concise, and I'll try to give you some tips along the way for those of you out there that are interested in possibly living abroad or starting your career abroad or pivoting your career to move abroad and live abroad and work as a photographer abroad. And some of the things I'm going to talk about probably are out of date. Some of them aren't because visa laws changed, the pandemic has changed things. The world changes constantly, so it's up to you guys to do the full research. But I'm going to tell you sort of how it happened for me. So I was going to San Francisco State University to study photojournalism. I found myself a little bit uninspired, even though San Francisco is a fantastic city and a great city visually for any photographers out there interested in, if you want to photograph protests, bam, great place to be. You want to photograph festivals and things like that, great place to be. Beauty, nature, great place to be. I just wasn't that inspired. I came out to Vietnam, I would say, as a focused backpacker, meaning I didn't come here to party. I kind of came out here to explore. I came out here with my camera. I visited Cambodia to do a photography workshop. I stayed around and did a couple stories there. Then I came to Vietnam and did a bus trip all the way from the south to the north. And then I kind of settled in the north here in Hanoi. And this was in 2006. And I kind of never left. I left a couple times, dabbled in finishing school up, but then I just sort of settled because I was inspired to shoot here. I fell in love with it here. So for many of you out there that have done these little trips before, we're I'd like to live here. That would be cool, and you romanticize about it and never did it. Well, that's what I did. I actually did that. I was I like shooting here in Hanoi. I like the people here. I'm inspired to shoot. Why don't I make a living here? I didn't think it through like a lot of people do and think about the economics and all that kind of stuff. It was just as simple as that. I'm inspired to shoot here. I'm happy here right now. I was young, but it's not to say you can't make this change at another point in your life. And it's a lot harder for people out there that have a family, have kids and things like that. I totally get it, but I'm just going to give you my experience. I'm not making you do this or even encouraging you to do it. I'm just kind of giving you some tips along the way and telling you why I did it. All right? So back off, you skeptics out there typing there. I've got a family. I can't move here. Blah, 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 blah. I get them all the time. Stop it. I'm not going to respond. I delete now. I don't even respond. I respond to 1 out of 10 mean comments if they're slightly mean, but if I feel like I need to address something, I'll address it. Most of the time, just delete. I have that power. I can delete you. Like the Elon Musk of my own little YouTube world. Okay, so came here, young man, not that young, late 20s, started my career a little bit later in life, but I said, love it here, like to shoot here, like the people here, let's see if I can make this work. And at the time, you could stay here on what was called a business visa, and those laws are always kind of changing, and every country is very different, so I encourage any of you out there, that's the first tip. If you're going to move anywhere, live anywhere, it's not just I'm an American, I can live wherever I want. No, that's not the case. It used to be the case, actually, for a lot of different countries for a long time. That was a privilege that you had coming from a wealthier country. But post-pandemic, things are different. Not complaining, I get it. U.S. isn't open to anyone to just come there and live there. So I'm not going to get into the political side of that, but first thing, important to understand the visas and also understand what you can do within that visa. So when I came to Vietnam, it was very loose. I came here on a 1-year business visa, but I didn't need to say that I was doing any business or have any sort of degree or anything like that. Things have changed drastically. Now to live here, now for Americans, I still think they have a 1-year business visa. I think that's coming back. But for Europeans, I have a friend who has to leave every 3 months. And to get a work permit, which was legally allow you to work in that country, that takes all sorts of paperwork. And you need a degree specialized in the area that you want to work in. So you're not taking the job of a local person that's qualified to do that job. Hope that makes sense. A lot of countries have clauses, like Thailand has different things where you could, if you invest a certain amount of your money in that country, you hire a certain amount of local people, you can make it work. So every country is completely different. Every law is different, and those things are constantly changing. So don't think that you can just now pack your bags, grab your camera, and just move to another country and make it work. It's not that easy anymore, but it's not possible because people do it. So you just have to do a lot more research, and you have to put a lot more time in, and you probably have to file a lot more paperwork. But another tip on that note, there's a lot of agencies out there that can help you do that stuff. But another tip on top of that tip is there's a lot of scams for people doing that as well. So be very careful, be diligent, do your homework. So back to why. I was thinking to myself, okay, again, back then, not so hard, so I figured I could make a run at this. If it doesn't work, I can always just go back. There was nothing holding me back in San Francisco. I had my friends there, my family there, fine, but they weren't going anywhere. So I could just go back and see them if I wanted, go back and live there if I wanted. And I wasn't tied to any particular job. I was bartending, and I liked that job, but it was fine. I could get another bartending gig. So I came out here with my camera, with some dreams, but I focused on work. I focused on making a name for myself as a photographer with content, with stories, with pictures from this region, not just from Vietnam, but the entire region. I thought of myself as a versatile photographer that could do commercial work, editorial work. Even at the time, I was doing a lot of wedding work as well. So I came here and I'm like, I am just going to market and sell myself as a photographer. Whoever wants to pay me to shoot, bring it on, I'll shoot. I mean, not anything. I did actually have some requests for people wanting to shoot quasi-porn stuff. I said no. Not acting in it, shooting in it, obviously, but it could have been an extra in a porn, maybe the photographer in the background, I don't know. Anyway, so that's what I did. I said, listen, I'm gonna make this work because I am inspired here, and I came here and I fell in love even more. I know I liked it for a month when I was living here, but when I came back to live here, every year things got better. Every year I fell less in love with America. I still love my country, but I fell more in love with living here. I didn't miss it as much. I liked going back to visit. I really missed Vietnam when I went home. And a lot of people say, oh, you must have just loved the food. Actually, I didn't fall in love with the food. I'm a vegetarian. Most of the delicious cuisine here, most of the cuisine that Vietnam is famous for, has meat in it, so I don't eat a lot of the cuisine. I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the street photography here. I fell in love with how diverse the country is from north to south, to the landscape and the villages and the culture and all that stuff. And I just was there's so many different festivals, so many different things to shoot, so many different things to aim my camera at. And I just hustled. I worked every single day shooting something different. I was practicing lighting, practicing portraits, practicing travel photography. And then that started to turn into assignments, started to get work for the New York Times. I parlayed that into work for Bloomberg, parlayed that into work for the Wall Street Journal and Forbes. And then a lot of European magazines and different agencies that started to hire me. I began to be known as the Vietnam guy. And that was enough to sustain me for a little bit, but it was still kind of sporadic. So I started marketing my wedding business, destination weddings, people that were coming here to get married from other countries or mixed couples. And I also did a lot of local weddings as well, although the style that I was shooting was more for people doing destination weddings, because a lot of the local weddings here are in giant banquet halls. And tell you what, I admire the local photographers that do those banquet weddings that can make good pictures out of it, because it's hard. There's giant rooms, horrible lighting, not a good recipe for nice pictures. But did destination weddings, made a living, basically, is what happened. And in my free time, when I wasn't getting paid to shoot, I was shooting my own stuff, shooting stories and just bettering myself as a photographer and becoming more diverse as a photographer. And I made it work. And visa laws have changed through the years, and work permits and things have gotten a lot different for people through the years, but I'm legally married to my wife, who is a local Vietnamese, and we also have a legal business together, so we've done everything through proper channels, and we've done it the right way. Now, I did see during the pandemic, a lot of photographers, a lot of freelancers here were scrambling because the laws tightened up during the pandemic, and a lot of them had been living here a long time and not legally. And so they were scrambling and they were in trouble because they were actually had to sort of pack up and leave and go back to the US. A lot of them made a whole career out here being a freelancer. And they kind of had nowhere to go because you needed a work permit, and you needed a work permit to get a visa and to stay here, and they didn't have that. and they had no way to get it because they didn't have a company that would sponsor them, or they didn't have a degree in that field. So it became very difficult. And so that's another cautionary tale. Even if you go somewhere for a couple of years, maybe you go to Thailand and things are working out, different regimes come in, laws are changed, things change, man, and they can change drastically. So be prepared, stay on top of things, especially the research before, but constantly when you're living in another country, if you're living below the radar, you just never know when the laws are going to change. So have yourself backed up, have the right paperwork, do things the right way. Again, that all comes from doing the right research. So in addition to me being inspired and just loving the life here, I'd be lying if I didn't, or I wouldn't be fully transparent if I didn't say that, yeah, the cost of living was a big thing too, because I was getting paid Western rates and living in a country that the cost of living was like a fraction of the price, especially coming from San Francisco. So that mattered to me, of course, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, rent was cheaper, food was cheaper, day-to-day life was cheaper. That allowed me a lot of the freedoms. Now, careful, again, this is like an episode just sprinkled with cautionary tales. I see a lot of photographers that go to countries that aren't as wealthy as other countries, and then they become lazy. And that can easily happen because you can get very comfortable working like a couple jobs a month, and that's enough to get you by on your $300 a month rent. I mean, that's fine for some people, but that wasn't fine for me. I still wanted to hustle. I still wanted to work. I didn't want to be dormant. I didn't want to do like 1 or 2 shoots a month. I wanted to be working like the majority of days of a month. I wanted to be shooting. And when I wasn't shooting, I was focused on my business. So be careful of that. If you go to another country and it's a lot cheaper to live, you can easily get used to just like working a tiny bit and never really getting anywhere with your career, never advancing your career. And then you're in trouble too if you had to move. You move back to the US. Like, good luck trying to make a living in the US doing like 1 or 2 shoots a month. I mean, yeah, if you're like high-end photographer and those 1 or 2 shoots are like 50 grand or whatever, like a lot, then yeah, maybe you can make a living doing this. Yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say that wasn't a big part of it. And I mean, everything was cheap here. Beer, I was drinking a lot of beer back then. Guest houses when I first moved here, but then rent for an apartment, even traveling around, even hiring a fixer, even traveling around, things like that, everything was cheaper. So that was important to me. So that did play a role in it. It allowed me, it gave me the freedom to advance my career because I could focus, when I wasn't shooting assignments, I could focus on bettering myself. I didn't have to take like a full-time 9-to-5 job. I could focus on improving the other skills in my photography work, like understanding lighting more, getting stock images, which was like a thing back then, which good luck trying to make any money off of that now. But it was as simple as that for me. I was inspired to shoot here. I enjoyed life here. I decided to make it work. I didn't say like I'll try to make it work. I decided I'm gonna make this work, or I'm gonna like fully go at it, and I did. And happy with my decision? Yeah, hell yeah. I mean, so happy. Met my wife, got my dogs here, got my life here, have my photography businesses here, several businesses, and I'm happy about that. And I don't think I could have had that opportunity in America. I really don't. And so extremely happy with my decision. It wasn't always easy at times, and getting used to the different culture and all these different things. Anytime one person's going from one culture to another, wherever that may be, there's challenges. But there's so much happiness in it too, and there's so much adventure in it, and that's what I fell in love with, and that's why I never left, and that's why I'm still inspired to shoot here, and still inspired to live here, and still very much enjoy my life here. So that's it. It was as simple as that. Hope you enjoyed this episode. I know it's a little bit different. I know a lot of you out there have had this question or thought about moving somewhere. I feel like they can't do it. And yes, it's harder now than it was before, for Vietnam in particular, but other countries, again, laws are changing, things are changing. People do it. It's not impossible. You just gotta like hunker down, do the research, fill out the paperwork, make it happen, if that's what you want to do. If not, that's okay too. Anyway, you guys, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to have a wonderful day.